This is the H-bomb at work. The cap is more than 100 miles wide. The stem of the mushroom is 25 miles across. The poison from the cloud reaches around the world. This is an old model H-bomb. This is the means for destroying all living things on Earth. It is upon the control of this frightful thing that the President of the United States had this to say.
I tell you frankly, I have said my last words on these subjects.
And Vice President of the United States, Richard Nixon, said, catastrophic nonsense.
Whether or not my proposal to control test explosions of nuclear bombs is catastrophic nonsense is not to be determined by a refusal of discussion, nor by ridicule. I had no political motives in mind when I introduced this suggestion many months ago, even long before the nominating conventions. It was not my decision to consider the matter as a national political issue. It was, and it is, far too serious for that. I don't attempt to dictate your opinions upon this vital subject, but I would like you to know how many people who have been close to this, responsible people, feel about it, and why they feel as strongly as they do.
This is where a minor bomb worked, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki areas. This was a virtual firecracker to the bombs we have now. This area was poisoned by visible fire and invisible radiation. Areas of our own country since have been contaminated by radiation, even though no such scenes as these exist in them. Wisconsin has been perhaps strongly affected by strontium-90 fallout. Other states have had their poison levels raised as well by continuing H-bomb tests. During the years since the invention of the device which made such damage as you see here possible, we have been blessed by a younger generation in whose hands our future lies. We have cultivated a group of our sons and daughters who have not only designed for us the means for the destruction of any city in the world, including these American cities and all those between, but have, in addition, shown us the way to survival. Here is the director of the Syndrotron Laboratory at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology at Cambridge, Massachusetts, Dr. Louis S. Osborne.
As a nuclear physicist, I've been concerned for a long time with the implications of nuclear weapons. There is one point on which there is no disagreement. Without any more tests, the United States has or will have enough nuclear bombs to devastate Russia completely. With no further tests, Russia will have enough bombs to devastate the United States. This is a fact, and we should not get panicky. We should face it soberly and coolly. Now, I agree, and I think you will too, that an American election may not be the most sober and the coolest place to carry on a debate. However, I do hope that now that this issue has been brought up, that we can stare the facts in the face, not only now during election time, but after the election as well. It is my ultimate faith, as I'm sure it is yours, that the final goal of the world not only should be, but will be, free and democratic governments everywhere. However, that goal is not easy, and it won't come overnight. We have to worry about the problem of dispelling the distrust between Russia and the free world. And I think it's on this problem and in this context that we ought to discuss the banning of H-bomb tests.
And here is Dr. William Davidon, brilliant Chicago physicist.
On November the 1st, 1952, the first thermonuclear explosion on the surface of the Earth was set off by the United States at Bikini. On August the 21st, 1953, Russia set off a similar explosion of her own. In these two explosions, the potentialities for destruction and death caused danger to the progress of mankind for its thousands of years of existence, and in fact threatens the very existence of mankind himself. If we are to face this danger, if we are to make strides in advancing the state of mankind, we must act with a sense of urgency to achieve a sounder and more secure peace. The only way which we have at the present time of ensuring this peace is by having the ability to wreak such destruction and havoc upon the peoples of any nation to deter their leaders from starting such a war. We must find a secure basis for the peace in our land. The radioactive materials that have been released from the explosions of hydrogen bombs to date has put into the stratosphere the strontium and other contaminants that would be produced by the explosion of over 2,000 Hiroshima-type bombs. These materials will be falling to Earth for many years to come. In evaluating the effects of this radiation, it should be remembered that it falls on the whole world's population, on infants and others who may be particularly susceptible to the effects of radiation. In such a circumstance, it is not proper to apply tolerances appropriate to small groups of individuals who are workers at atomic energy installations and apply these tolerances to the worldwide population. At the same time, it should be pointed out that nobody knows at this time with certainty whether or not the effects will or will not be seriously harmful to the world's population. In view of this fact, the problem of fallout and of its biological effects is not the crucial reason at this time. The crucial reason instead is the problem of how do we prevent nations from developing these weapons, other nations that do not now have them, how do we prevent new kinds of weapons from being developed, and how do we achieve some measure of control and hope to improve the rate at which we find new measures of control. The existing possibility for harmful effects from this radiation must be considered within the larger context of how best to promote the welfare and the security of the United States together with the rest of the world's populations. In this context, in this crucial question, the proponents of the continuation of H-bomb testing should come forth and discuss this issue rationally and not, as has already happened, refuse to participate in this public discussion. Only in this manner can the people of this country, the people of a democratic country, decide for themselves what course of action is in their own best interests.
And the widow of one of America's greatest presidents, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt.
A few years ago, and the years go fast now, my husband had a secret that he could share with no one except a very few scientists. It was mid-World War II, and the secret concerned everyone in the world, though no one knew how much in those days. This secret was the research to discover how to make the atomic bomb. He had approved the construction of the bomb once the research had been made, and we proceeded with the work that was necessary and attained the results sooner than Germany did, which is what saved us and really won the war in a certain way for us. I think America has no apologies to make for the manufacture and use of the bomb in a war we did not seek and certainly did not want. But I do think we have a grave responsibility for guiding the power we develop into channels which benefit rather than injure all of mankind. My thoughts at the moment are of families all over the world. For according to a substantial number of scientists concerned with the development of atomic energy and the hydrogen bomb, there is real danger to the human race in the radiation, the fallout from this bomb. Now, nobody is saying that we are going to be destroyed immediately. But many scientists are saying, they differ slightly in how much the human race can take, but they are saying that there is a saturation point, and that when you reach that saturation point, that is the end of the human race. So without a war, you can today destroy the human race in time. Now, it is said that we should not make this an issue, that it is not a campaign issue. We should not even discuss it. It seems to me that it is the one thing that we not only should but can discuss, because I do not believe that the Soviet Union wishes to destroy its people any more than we wish to destroy ourselves. So there is a chance that in this one thing, which we now have the hope that wherever a hydrogen bomb test was made, we would be able to detect it just as we detect an earthquake. And even though there is the faint chance that somewhere we might not detect it, I think the natural desire to protect yourself gives us more chance that we can trust a promise made on this subject than on any other. So in the framework of disarmament, it is the one thing we can offer. And women, who are the natural conservers of human life, I think will realize that this is almost the most important thing to the peace of the world and the existence of the human race in the future. Other countries that cannot make war, that cannot afford a war, have been thinking for some time that we were the warmongers, because we would never accept any of the Soviet proposals, because we could not accept them without verification by inspection. Here is one thing we might take the initiative in doing. And while I believe that everything in life has a risk, it seems to me to have less risk than anything else, and to be worth the slight risk that is involved. And so I agree with Adlai Stevenson. I think we should take the minimum risk, and therefore that we should do away with the tests of the hydrogen bomb. And I do not believe that our scientists will not continue their research and be able to keep up with the Soviet Union's scientists. As a mother, I am concerned, but as a grandmother, I'm even more concerned, not only about my grandchildren, who have a right to a life, but about all the children in the world who are growing up in the hope of having a better life. Many of them have had great misery in the past, and I think we can remove one threat to their future, and that we should try to do it.
And from the Department of Zoology and Genetics at Columbia University, Professor Clarence Dunn.
All of us, as citizens of the world, are concerned with transmitting to our children and their children the world as we found it when we got it. We are not going to do that if we put into it forces which will change the characters of our descendants in ways which we would try desperately to avoid if we knew how to avoid it. One way of avoiding the risk, the extent of which no one at this moment can predict, least of all the scientists primarily concerned with it. We do not know the extent to which our atmosphere is being poisoned, because we do not know how many bombs are going to be exploded in the next few years. But we at least know this, that every addition of radioactivity in the atmosphere is cumulative. What goes up, as we know, must come down, and it comes down in the cumulated quantity acquired by all of the explosions which we and other atomic powers release into the atmosphere. That there will be change, there is no question. The degree of change is a subject of controversy among scientists, but the direction of change, namely toward increase in that which causes change, in animals and plants and human beings, concerning this, there is no question at all. As a scientist, I'm aware of the fact that most of my colleagues in science are unlikely to take open positions on questions which are likely to become the subject of political controversy. I think, however, that we are faced now with a decision as citizens concerning the future explosions of atomic and hydrogen bombs, which don't permit a position of neutrality. This seems to me to be an unmoral position, particularly on the part of persons who know the damage that this kind of thing can do to the future. My own interests and special knowledge is in the field of genetics, which has to do with the transmission of hereditary characters from one generation to another. It is quite clear that if the levels of radioactivity in our environment are to be increased beyond the point which they have now reached, we may expect change to occur in the generations not only of animals and plants, but of human beings. This is because radiation changes hereditary characters. Not all of the changes are visible immediately or even in the next generation succeeding the one which suffered the radiation damage. We deplore the injuries dealt out to the Japanese population in the bombing of their cities. We know that some damage, a great deal, was done, but the point of interest now to people in my field is what will happen to the babies 2 generations, 3 generations now who were subjected to that intense radiation. Now we are all going to be subjected to some level of radiation if we do not stop the increasing levels which are bound to come by continued testing of the hydrogen bomb.
There is no reason to believe men of the type you see before you will not once again rise in this world despite every effort we might make to prevent it. Is there any thinking American who believes that this man would not have used the newest weapons possible to keep his place in the sun? Is it reasonable to believe that this man wouldn't have used the most powerful of bombs to prevent his defeat? Lest we forget, Hitler's scientists were well on the way to building atomic bombs when Germany was knocked out of the war, and our own scientists beat them to the nuclear secret. The stopping of bomb tests by all nations at once is a question of national and international responsibility. The bomb must not get into the hands of such as these. Senator Clinton Anderson of New Mexico is chairman of the Joint Atomic Energy Committee.
If I were to offer to the American people one bit of advice in support of Adlai Stevenson's proposal that America lead in obtaining an agreement to ban the testing of Super H bombs, it might well be the proverb that we should never put off until tomorrow what we can do today. No one knows the exact danger that may be involved in the continued explosion of huge hydrogen bombs. No one can today measure with precision the eventual genetic effects from continued exposure to radioactive fallout. There are opinions on both sides, but Governor Stevenson's proposal has the support of able scientists from laboratories who concur that radioactive fallout presents possibilities for serious after effects. In any event, we all know this: there must someday be a halt to H-bomb testing, and it might be wise to call one now. That is what Governor Stevenson has sought to do. I know the controversy his proposal has brought about, but I question some of the arguments. No one, and certainly not Governor Stevenson, has tried to stop research or terminate the development of weapons essential to our national defense. The great research centers, like Los Alamos, Livermore, and Argonne, to mention a few, would go on with their important contributions. No one should question that. Nor would we say to the military that the design and fabrication of new weapons should stop. Certainly this nation wants and must have everything it needs to stop aggression. But we might examine those needs. First, do we need bigger bombs? I say no. And if I read the President's comments correctly, he says no. For in his press conference on March 21st of this year, he said that you do not drive a tack with a sledgehammer. So when you have a bomb of maximum tactical size, useful size, you would go no further. And let me read from the New York Times of April 7, 1954, saying President Eisenhower sees no need to build a larger H-bomb. And then this from the text. President Eisenhower said today that the United States had no intention of building bigger hydrogen bombs than those now in production. At his press conference this morning, the President declared he knew of no military reason for building bigger ones. Actually, the size of our stockpile of nuclear weapons is a matter of military security. But this, I feel, can safely be said. We have an abundance of very large super bombs, far more than any contemplated war would ever require. That's one side of the coin. The other side is that we now know how to make even bigger bombs, weapons so gigantic that there is no target important enough to justify their use and so destructive that no sane military commander would turn them loose on the world any more than he would turn loose poison gas. So, greater size is not our goal. Second, do we need smaller bombs? I say yes, and I base it on recent testimony before the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy, of which I am the chairman. We need a variety of bombs, a balanced stockpile of nuclear weapons, and if we have an abundance of super bombs, we now need to develop the smaller tactical weapons. These, as AEC Commissioner Murray has pointed out, would serve as deterrents of lawless action on a lesser scale and to cope with such action if it occurred. We are making good headway in pushing these smaller weapons into production. That is why we can safely take the bold step toward peace that Adlai Stevenson has suggested. And the time to do it is now. Not only Russia, Great Britain, and the United States are testing, and before the nations begin. Only last May, the President's advisor on disarmament, Harold Stassen, said that within a year the secret of the A-bomb would spread around the world. What then? If we don't know now what testing super H-bombs is doing to radiation levels and what genetic dangers are developing, what will we know when Red China and East Germany and India begin to test? And will West Germany and France and Italy be left out of such an arms race? I doubt it, and so do you. Nothing has been more evident since 1914 than that the nations of the world quickly and without regard to the condition of their domestic budgets jump into an arms race, whether it be submarines, airplanes, or atom bombs. The testing of the hydrogen and other superweapons will be no exception. Now is the time to call a halt. Now, when only three need to agree. Yes, now when Russia and Britain seem ready to take this important step on the path toward peace. Only President Eisenhower seems to resist. He used what the press services called sharp language when he replied to the Russian premier after Bulganin had revealed that Russia sees the danger in H-bomb testing and is ready to call a halt. Adlai Stevenson has found no need for sharp language in his search for peace. He proposes to make it his first order of business as president to meet with the other atomic powers, Russia and Great Britain, and try to find areas of agreement on the ending of large-scale hydrogen tests by all three. Let us, by electing him president, give him the mandate of Ulysses to strive, to seek, to find.
Some of the things you have just seen and heard may have concerned you. They certainly concern me. I cannot compromise my feeling of urgency that the control of these vast powers is a most important, pressing world problem. The solution will not prove simple, but the effort to find a solution must never cease. I believe we must somehow guarantee mankind against the horrible destructiveness of the hydrogen bomb. I believe the poisoning of the world's atmosphere, perhaps of man's future, must stop. I believe that the United States, for our sake and all humankind, should lead the world to a responsible position in control of this awesome force. I believe we have no alternative.